police chief walks into his precinct undercover, hoping to observe his officers without their masks on. But when a white cop spits in his face, thinking he's just a nobody, the entire room is moments away from a shocking revelation that will leave them all reeling. It was a muggy Tuesday morning in August when Richard Nelson, a newly appointed police chief, stepped out of his car in the heart of Blue Ridge, a small city tucked away in the rolling hills of North Carolina. Dressed in a simple plaid shirt, worn jeans, and scuffed sneakers, he didn't look the part of a man who had spent 2 decades climbing the ranks in law enforcement. That was exactly his intention. Richard believed in seeing things for what they truly were, not through the polished lens of scheduled meetings or rehearsed welcomes. As a black man stepping into a leadership role in a precinct plagued by whispers of misconduct, he wanted to observe the department unfiltered. What better way to do that than to blend in? The precinct's parking lot buzzed with officers coming and going. Richard scanned the area, noting the casual banter and occasional glances his way. No one seemed to recognize him, which was unsurprising. His appointment had been announced just days ago, and he had chosen not to publicize his arrival until the official inspection later that morning. He adjusted the brim of his baseball cap and took a deep breath. The weight of his mission to root out the toxicity festering within the department pressed heavy on his shoulders. He was no stranger to resistance, but he knew this job would test him in ways he hadn't yet imagined. As he approached the building, the faint sound of laughter carried through the air. Richard stepped through the precinct's side entrance unnoticed among the hum of casual chatter and ringing phones. The tiled floors glistened under harsh fluorescent lights, and the smell of stale coffee hung in the air. He walked slowly, observing the dynamics around him. Groups of officers huddled near desks, some swapping stories, others reviewing paperwork. No one paid him much attention until he paused near the break room. "Hey, you!" A sharp voice cut through the noise. Richard turned to see a white officer striding toward him, a smug grin plastered on his face. His badge read, "Officer Daniels." Behind him, a few others leaned against the wall, watching with interest. Richard opened his mouth to speak, but Daniels didn't give him the chance. "Lost, are we? This isn't a shelter," the officer said, his tone dripping with condescension. "You need to take that mess somewhere else." Richard froze, the words landing like a punch. He wasn't sure whether to correct the man immediately or let the scene unfold further. Before he could decide, Daniels stepped closer, his voice rising for the benefit of his audience. "Didn't you hear me? Get out of here! We don't need people like you hanging around!" Laughter erupted from the onlookers, and Richard clenched his jaw, his heart pounding. He tried to speak, but Daniels leaned in, his face inches away. Then, without warning, the officer spit straight into Richard's face. Time seemed to stop. Richard's breath hitched as the warm saliva dripped down his cheek. Around him, the laughter grew louder. One officer slapped the table, doubling over in amusement, while another muttered something about showing the riffraff their place. Richard's mind raced. He could feel his pulse pounding in his ears, but he kept his composure. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a handkerchief to wipe his face, his movements slow and deliberate. "Is this how you treat everyone who walks through these doors?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Daniel smirked. "Only the ones who don't belong here." The group burst into laughter again, but Richard said nothing. Instead, he turned and walked down the hallway, leaving the officers behind as he headed toward the precinct's main office. An intercom crackled to life, calling all personnel to the briefing room. It was time. The briefing room was abuzz with chatter as officers filed in, some carrying coffee mugs, others laughing over inside jokes. Richard entered through a side door, now holding a folder that bore the precinct's official seal. He stood just out of view, watching the room fill with familiar faces, some still chuckling from the earlier incident at the coffee shop. At the front of the room, Captain Harris, a stout man with a graying mustache, called for order. "All right, settle down, everyone. We've got an important introduction today." The officers quieted, their curiosity piqued.
Daniels leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, a smug expression still plastered on his face. The man was clearly enjoying his morning. Captain Harris cleared his throat. As most of you know, Chief Caldwell retired last month. We've been waiting for his replacement, and I'm pleased to introduce our new leader, a man with an impressive record and a vision for this department. Richard stepped forward, his footsteps measured. The room froze as he walked to the podium, his presence commanding attention. He placed the folder on the lectern and slowly scanned the room. His calm demeanor only heightened the tension. Daniel's smirk faltered. The color drained from his face as recognition dawned. The other officers exchanged uneasy glances, some whispering, others staring at Richard with wide eyes. "Good morning," Richard began, his voice steady. "My name is Richard Nelson. As of today, I am your new Chief of Police." The silence was deafening. Daniel's face turned a deep shade of red, his bravado evaporating. Richard's gaze landed on him, holding for a moment longer than necessary before sweeping across the rest of the room. "When I arrived this morning," Richard continued, "I came in plain clothes because I wanted to see the department through an unfiltered lens."
What I witnessed was eye-opening. A murmur rippled through the crowd, but Richard raised a hand to silence it. In my brief time here, I've already seen behaviors that are not just unprofessional, but downright unacceptable. Let me make one thing clear. The culture that has been allowed to fester here ends today. The room remained eerily quiet, the weight of his words sinking in. Daniels shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the floor. Richard took a step closer to the edge of the podium, his tone sharp but controlled. Respect is not optional. It's the foundation of what we do as law enforcement. Without it, we fail, not just each other, but the community we serve. He let the silence hang for a moment, watching the officers squirm under his gaze. This morning, some of you laughed at what you thought was just another powerless man being put in his place. But let me remind you, everyone who walks through those doors deserves respect, whether they're wearing a badge or not. His words cut through the room like a blade.